This video is about speed, rate of change, and something called S-curve adoption with regard to the death of the global dollar standard. Now, I've had this browser window open for several months now, and I've been adding stories to it that are all similar because I've found that when you connect the dots between all these stories, it starts to tell a story within a story. And so this story goes back to April 9th of this year, and French Prime Minister Macron says that Europe should reduce dependence on the US dollar. On April 24th, central bank gold buying at the highest level since the 1950s as 30% of world economies are now sanctioned by the G7. This is a chart provided by Incrementum that goes from 1950 through 2022. Now, so this does not, this is annual data. It isn't quarterly data. So we don't have any data yet in here for this year that you can see the central bank gold buying that was happening last year. And then Zimbabwe to introduce gold-backed digital currency. This is a big move. Why? Because obviously they're using currency instead of money. If it was money, it couldn't do this. Just a few years ago, it only took a few Zimbabwe dollars to buy a US dollar. Now it takes more than 1,000 Zimbabwe dollars to buy a US dollar. Moving on. Now we're up to May 30th. Gallup poll shows Americans consider gold the second best long-term investment. What was the best? They considered it real estate. Now this is an annual poll, so let's come back and visit this. This is on May 30th. Of this year. So let's come back May 30th of next year and see where this stands if they still think real estate is a better long-term investment than gold. I have a feeling the positions will be reversed. Next, just in, Williams Ruto, president of Kenya, urges African nations to dump the US dollar for intracontinental trade. So within Africa, they've got this new Afra-Exim Bank that will settle in local currencies between all of the countries within Africa doing trade. So watch a little bit of this video and listen.
Traders from Djibouti selling to Kenya or traders from Kenya selling to Djibouti have to look for US dollars. How is US dollars part of the trade between Djibouti and Kenya? Why? And we are saying that today, Afri-Exim Bank have given us a mechanism where traders in our continent can trade in their goods and services, and the Africa-Exim Bank will settle payments in local currency. That is why Kenya champions the Pan-African Payment and Settlement System that is done by our own institution, the Afri-Exim Bank. Why, members? Why is it necessary for us to buy things from Djibouti and pay in dollars? Why? There is no reason. And we are not against the US dollar. We just want to trade much more freely. Let us pay in US dollars what we are buying from the US. But what we are buying from Djibouti, let's use local currency.
So that was June 12th. On June 13th, there's articles about it in Today News Africa. And so there's a journalist here, though, that says he cautions challenges. And yes, there are challenges. A currency that's being used as the predominant currency in international trade does need very deep and liquid financial markets and debt markets. And it can't, like in China right now, there are currency controls. There's restrictions on how much Chinese yuan you can send out of the country. And that doesn't work when it's a but. How long will it take China to address if it only has a couple of barriers left as becoming a global reserve currency? then they're going to take action and they are going to eliminate those barriers. June 13th, U.S. Treasury Secretary Yellen. Now, we know how often she's been right. We should expect a slow decline in the dollar as a reserve currency. We're going to revisit this later. On June 15th, 20 new countries apply to join the BRICS alliance. On the June 19th, this is central bank gold buying, and this one does have the first quarter of 2023 in it. And so you can see that it's just accelerating, and this says especially BRICS plus nations continue as gold now makes up a greater percentage of reserve assets than at any time in the past 40 years. Well, I wish this chart was about what they just said. Putting this in the title is confusing because this is the scale of their purchases measured in net gold purchases. So this is in metric tons, not the percentage of their reserves. But still, this is very, very impressive, and it continues. Gold's steady migration from west to east, a very good article that illustrates how, for years and years, the West has been selling gold, the East has been buying gold. How long will the dollar last as the world's default currency? The BRICS nations are gathering in South Africa this August with it on the agenda. And this was June 25th. Now, I'm sure that it has never been on the agenda before. This is a big, big move. Now, there are some other things in this Fortune article that are interesting. They do give some statistics. 88% of international transactions are conducted in U.S. dollars. I will get to why in a moment. And the dollar accounts for 58% of global foreign exchange reserves. So in the central banks, 58% of them, percent of their reserves is U.S. dollars. Breaking news: Moscow Exchange to launch ruble-priced gold futures in July. This is important because it helps if they're going to do anything that is based on gold, having an exchange in your country that prices the contracts in your local currency helps to underpin that new monetary system. Russia Today, this is from July 5th, so we're getting closer. But the BRICS is set to announce a new currency backed by gold in contrast to the credit-backed U.S. dollar. Well, I've got news for you, Russia Today. It's created through credit, but what backs it is our own enslavement. What backs the U.S. dollar is future taxation. So you have to work in the future and pay taxes to pay this credit that was given to us. They borrowed it into existence. How do they pay it off? From our future taxes. If it's bank credit, it's paid off through your future car payments or house payments. So all of the dollars that exist today aren't created from thin air. They aren't, and this is, if somebody says that, they don't know what they're talking about. They don't know the difference between currency and money. Money isn't created by enslaving a population. Currency, national fiat currencies are. BRICS plans to introduce new gold-backed currency. This is the July 6th, July 8th. Alistair McLeod, I love him. Alistair is great. Hello, Alistair. How are you doing? Yesterday, we had confirmed the most important monetary development since Bretton Woods 80 years ago. BRICS, and this is Shanghai Cooperation Organization, will adopt a gold standard for trade. This is over 50% of global GDP on a purchasing power parity basis, and 64% of the world's population. The dollar, the pound, the euro, and the yen will be toast. Very good. Thumbs up, Alistair. That was great. Alistair, again, playing down the elephant in the room. And here's Janet Yellen responding. I'm not going to play this one, But she basically says there's data that suggests that the dollar should be used as the predominant trade currency in international trade for many years to come. And I don't think she understands S-curve adoption, which we're going to get to in a few minutes. The dollar has discredited itself. This is Sergei Lavrov, foreign minister of Russia. Now, it might seem expeditious and correct. Putin bad, U.S. good. We should just confiscate all of their, freeze their central bank assets that are not inside Russia, and we should start confiscating private property, even though it's Russian oligarchs' property, like the big yacht that was confiscated and so on. What we've done is we have overstepped our bounds, and it seems right when we're in the middle of the news cycle of the war in Ukraine. But you've got to remember that this changes every couple of years. I mean, it used to be Iran, and then it was Iraq, and then it was Libya and Afghanistan, and it just goes, it's like this sort of musical chairs that we're playing. And I've been warning about this for about 15 years now, that the world has new monetary systems periodically. Every 30 to 40 years, the world has had a brand new monetary system. Now, the old transitions, like going from a gold standard to Bretton Woods, the old transitions only affected large international corporations, international banks, and all of the central banks. It affected world trade. It affected exchange rates. It didn't affect the local population. This time, everybody on the planet is going to feel this transition. And if all of these things build up from an outsider's perspective, if you are a country on the outside of this looking at the U.S. Seemingly to you randomly punishing this guy, randomly punishing that guy, just because they're not doing with what we agree with, then it undermines the power that we have been given by having the world's reserve currency is immense. And by abusing this, we're undermining it slowly. We could have been, when you play the game Monopoly, there's the players and there's the bank. And the bank cannot go broke. It's the only entity in the game that cannot go broke. It has this enormous advantage to be the bank. And by abusing this, we're undermining this birthright that we think it's a birthright, but this exorbitant privilege that we have been granted, where we have this very high standard of living. When we create more dollars, if 80% of the transactions in the world are being done in the dollar, and 58% of the currency reserves around the planet are US dollars, that means that when we inflate the currency supply, the inflation respects no borders. It devalues the currency outside of our border as well as the currency inside of it, and transfers that devaluation, that wealth was transferred to the United States. And so it's a stealth tax on the rest of the world that we have been able to enjoy since the Bretton Woods system. Since 1944, we've had this exorbitant privilege of being able to have a very small amount of wealth constantly transferred to us from the rest of the world, elevating the United States to the highest standard of living in the world. We're going to lose that. It is being undermined by all of the politicians, especially in this century. It started with George Bush, but every president since then has taken some sort of action to undermine the US dollar as the global reserve currency. So the gold standard is back, BRICS, to introduce gold-backed reserve currency. And the reason I bring this one up, this is July 10th, is because today it just became a reality. 41 plus countries look like they could be returning to a gold standard. Now, just a month earlier, it was 20 countries that were looking to join this. Now, a month later, There's 41 countries that are interested, and this is part of what happens during S-curve adoption, which we're going to get to in a few minutes. Alistair again, the confirmation of a new gold-backed BRICS currency is met with disbelief in the financial markets. This will change when central banks clean out the gold market. Central banks cleaning out the gold market means far higher prices. So far, they've been able to keep the prices suppressed and accumulate and accumulate and accumulate for a very, very long time. Policy committees around the world will be meeting this week. Now, that was on July 10th, to re-examine their bullion requiremements. Well, I guarantee you, they're still meeting, and they're going to be meeting up until this thing gets launched, or up until the decision that is made at the August meeting of the BRICS countries. So precious metals surge as BRICS gold-backed currency fuels bullish momentum, and this is July 14th. India ties up with the United Arab Emirates to settle trade in rupees. I'll show you why these things are important shortly. The IMF hints at allowing countries to use the Chinese yuan for debt repayment. Now, I'm going to show you why the dollar is used in most international trade and why this is so important. This is July 15th. So here we have this wonderful map from Visual Capitalist, and it's about world's major trading partner. So here is why this is important. It's why the dollar is used in international trade throughout more than 80% of all international transactions. Let's say you have an electronics store in New Zealand or Argentina, and you're going to be buying some doodads from an electronics manufacturer in Taiwan. Well, you don't have any Taiwan dollars that you can buy those with. If you're in Argentina, you don't have any Taiwan dollars. You've got Argentine pesos, and here you've got Kiwis, the New Zealand dollar that you can pay with. But Taiwan can't use Argentine pesos or New Zealand dollars. They don't have any of those. Nobody accepts them. So both of you, though, your major trading partner, Taiwan, is selling more to the U.S. every year and getting paid in U.S. dollars, and then their bank, a lot of businesses in countries that do have a lot of trade with the United States, will keep both a dollar-denominated bank account and a bank account that's denominated in their local currency. So the Taiwan doodad manufacturer might have they take in all of these dollars. Some of them are converted into Taiwan dollars and deposited into their other account so that they can pay employees and run their business and such. Others are just kept there for when they're buying something from another country and the transaction is going to be in U.S. dollars. So this buildup of dollars around the world and the liquidity of having every bank around the world is doing conversion of dollars into the local currency all the time, all day long. It's extremely easy. Plus, because of this, because all of these countries get flooded with dollars, like when I was in Peru, you could get into any cab. You could pay with Peruvian sol, or you could pay with U.S. dollars. Same thing in a market or or going out to dinner. It didn't paying your hotel bill. They would accept either. It didn't matter. The U.S. dollar was, a $20 bill you could pretty much use almost anywhere in the world. Now, the great thing about this chart, this map that they've put together here, this is in the year 2000. This goes back all the way to the end of the Mao era. So we go back to 1980, and what you see here is that the U.S. is in blue. All its major trading partners are in blue. There's a lot of gray because there was no data collected back then. China is in red, and there's only a couple of countries that are doing business with China as their major trading partner, but it's almost equal. It's the scale here. The dark red or dark blue means it's predominant. It's the largest trading partner. As you get into this faded blue or red, it's becoming almost a 50-50 mix. Well, you go up to the year 2000, and still the U.S. is, I don't know, this is probably 85 or 90%, especially when you go, there's not a lot of population in northern Russia. When you go by population, I would imagine that this is 90% of the world is still doing most of their trade with the United States. But then watch what happens over the next few years. Now, most of the trade for Australia and New Zealand and, well, Argentina, it's still a lot, but it's being done with China, Russia. And so why should they have to change when New Zealand buys the doodads from Taiwan, which is now predominantly trade with China? Why should they have to convert to U.S. dollars and then pay in U.S. dollars to Taiwan, and then the Taiwan bank converting those into the Taiwan dollar when both of them are trading so heavily with China, and they could be receiving yuan and not exchanging them for, they could hold a yuan denominated bank account and just pay in yuan and buy the doodads that they need without currency conversion costs and floating exchange rates changing all of the time. It becomes easier and a little bit more reliable. And here's the thing, this ends in 2018. Imagine what this looks like today. So that is the important part on why this BRICS thing is starting to make sense and why it can gain some traction. Now, let's take a little detour and take a look at S-curve adoption. So this is S-curve adoption. Time is on the bottom. The percentage from nobody using this technology to 100% of the population using this technology is on the side here. And it always starts out slow with early adopters and then builds momentum and then becomes very, very fast and then slows down again as it reaches its peak. Here is a prime example of it. This is the Easter Day Parade in New York City. I was going to save this for a video that I was going to do on EV technology, electric vehicles. But I'm going to use it in both, so you'll see it again. In 1900, there's one car here, one motor vehicle, one automobile. These are all horses and carriages, and this is right near Times Square in New York City. And here is the same area in 1913, and it's all automobiles except for one horse and buggy. This can happen very, very quickly. It starts out very, I guarantee you, 1901 didn't look much different. 1902, 1905, it started to look a little different. 1907, it was really changing rapidly. But by 1910, it was all over with. So this is what it looks like with different technologies. Electricity's adoption from 0% to 100%. You can see the S a little better in things like color TV, starting off very slowly with early adopters when it was a very expensive technology, and then zooming up and finishing off that S. Computers also show a nice S, and the internet. But the best example on here would have been cell phones. It's just that this chart ends in 2005. It was just the best example that I could find. But what you see here is this goes up to about almost 90% before it's truncated, and you don't see the little tail at the end of that S curve. So here we've got time, and this is going by at just this is wiping across the screen at a certain speed. And you can see that it goes slowly and then goes real fast and slow again. That's S-curve adoption. Now, I am going to coin a brand new term. I believe it's a brand new term. I don't think anybody else has used this before. When it's a technology like, for instance, the internet didn't really replace anything. It was a new technology where we adopted it very quickly, and it had that S-curve adoption, but there was no technology that it was replacing. If you look at the horse and buggy versus the automobile, there was a technology that it was replacing. And what is happening is people want this new technology, and they start rejecting the old technology. So the term that I will coin here is S-curve rejection, and it happens at the same rate but in reverse as the one more time here, same rate, and it goes real fast in the middle. And so this is going to be happening with internal combustion engines as EVs take over. It's going to be happening with the dollar's reserve currency status as something better takes over. Now here is both of them happening together and the big zinger in the middle. Zing! It happens very quick. It happens slow at first and then speeds up, and then suddenly, bam, it's on us. Now I want to show you how fast this can happen. This is supposed to be a Tesla Roadster doing 0 to 60 in 1.1 seconds. And they've got this Tesla Roadster, and I think this is all fake, but it's a really good fake. Now, you'll see how quickly this accelerates and the consequences that are going to have to be dealt with later. So I don't believe that this Tesla didn't. There's only a few prototypes of the Roadster. None of them have artificial sound, and artificial sound of this volume. I don't think you could fit into this car. So I'm pretty darn sure this whole thing is fake. But watch this. Goodbye US dollar as the world's reserve currency. I want to thank you for watching.